Welcome to the All Things DER podcast, brought to you by AEIC. In this podcast, we dig in, define, and discuss where the new energy economy is heading with electric industry leaders and explore all the ways that distributed energy resources can modernize and improve our ever-evolving power grid. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to All Things DER podcast. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Cook. I am the DER chair, and today we're going to be talking with Raynetta Marshall, the Chief Operating Officer at JEA. It is a municipally owned, not-for-profit, multi-service utility serving Jacksonville, Florida. And we are excited to talk about what they're doing to prepare for all things DER. So I'm just going to throw it over to you and give a moment to introduce yourself to our guests.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here and enter into this conversation. Well, my name is Vanetta Marshall. I am with JEA, which is a municipally owned, not-for-profit, multi-service utility serving the Jacksonville area and then 2 surrounding counties. And when I say multi-service utility, we provide electric services, water services, as well as wastewater services, which makes us somewhat unique. If you look just on the electric front, we are the 8th largest municipally owned utility, 8th or 7th, depending on when you ask the question, and also one of the largest when it comes to our multitude of services. I've been with JEA in the position of Chief Operating Officer just over a year and a half, and it's been really great. And just recently on the board of AEIC, which I am also looking forward to. We have about 500,000 electric customers, serve a population of over 1.5 million. We provide all the way from generation all the way to the meter. So we've got generating facilities, transmission, and distribution. So we're fully vertically integrated and, have a variety of customers, variety of stakeholders. So in a nutshell, that is JEA, and be glad for any other questions.
I think it's a perfect size, especially in the state of Florida with everything happening with our distributed generation, which most people think solar. But I know there's a lot more going on in the industry than solar. So I'll just throw it over to you. What is your team and what you guys are doing? What do you foresee as the opportunities, or some may call challenges, as we transition to this clean, specifically how it's changing the distribution systems approach and ultimately how you serve your customers at the edge?
Okay, again, a great question. Let me start more like from a high strategic level, if I could. We are going through and really about to conclude our integrated resource planning process. We started this back in late 2021 and about to see it come to culmination in the next couple of months. And this is going to help set our direction, our compass, if you will, for how we provide services or next resources for our customers, because at the center of everything is how we're going to serve our customers. Included in that is DER, and where does it fit into the portfolio? And there's different future scenarios, if you will. And so in the IRP process, we've also included, for the first time, our stakeholders, who, as you can imagine, have varying levels of interest as far as what the future of JEA should hold. And we have been very laser focused on, despite what the interest level or different perspective is, that it must be a good balance of reliability, affordability, and sustainability. We pretty much said, or I should say, kind of set the ground rules for that, but welcomed all the feedback. And so where does DER fit into this picture? We still don't know that, but we do know that we need to be ready for that. And helping us do that, we are now conducting, our Black & Veatch is helping us conduct a readiness assessment. And in that readiness assessment, there are interviews that are being conducted all throughout JEA. And it's going to help us identify, because depending on who you ask, you're going to get a different perspective as far as what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, depending on what the stakeholder that's asked the question. But in that, what we are hoping to do is identify the gaps And from that gap analysis, identify what that roadmap is going to be within the context of the larger IRP. If I talk to operations, the first thing that we're going to hear is reliability. That reliability is at the forefront in getting the grid ready. If I talk to my planning folks, it's going to be, well, how do I plan for this? How do I plan or forecast demand? If I talk to those that are more customer focused or customer folks, it's going to be, well, what kind of incentives? How do we grow the program? How do we help manage these? Both manage the DER resources as well as manage utility resources. So many different perspectives. It's so very interesting. I think we are in the infancy of it. So I think all the right questions are being asked. And where we hope to land is on a good, solid foundation of DER and building for the future within that larger context of the Integrated Resources Plan.
Yeah, so I guess I love the term integrated resource plan. It's something that I hold close to my heart here at Duquesne Light. And so when we talk about that, just from our audience and listeners, when you think of typical utility planning, the job over the last 100 years has really been, okay, here are our assets, which is our wires and our transformers and ultimately our customer's home. And we would size the equipment to meet that customer demand. That was quite predictable. And so the planning process was sequential, regimented, and really there's a start and a finish. But what we're realizing in this new world, as you were really speaking of, based on who you speak to, from what business and what engagement, external or internal, there's a different answer. So that's the need for this integrated process. So when you guys are kicking off this process, you're really just kind of setting the stage of really ensuring that you can get all the stakeholders in the same room and then really follow this process that becomes repeatable and then shareable. Is that like a good reference, I guess, to our listeners, and the practicality of like you're actually planning your future grid by bringing in more voices, which is something that we've not had to do as an industry before. So it's a very exciting time. And really, when you think about what is driving that change is everything, all things DER, for our listeners, distributed resources is, which customers are embracing solar, EV charging, demand response, or energy efficiency type programs, and or any kind of generation that's dispatchable. Has JEA been seeing, a growth in these areas, in these technologies over the last, 2, 3, 5 years? And do you project that kind of growth to continue?
That's an excellent, it's a really, really good question. And we've seen more growth in the last year. And I'm just going to talk about customer cited solar in the last year than we've seen in the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I don't know what that, I don't know what that tells us. I don't know if that's a trend, if that was that particular to the last year, but it's certainly something to pay attention to. And I think also underscores what we're doing now as far as DER readiness. And there's different reasons that we hear why customers are doing DER, certainly environmental or solar, economics, and also resiliency, because it isn't always solar. We're finding that we have some of our customers that are concerned as far as resiliency is concerned and are having like their own microgrids. And so we want to make sure that we're going to be good partners in whatever customer solutions, so that they will engage with us as they are considering different options and not be reactive. And so always with the customer in mind, and another reason why this is something that's important to us as we look towards the future.
And I guess another word I just like to explore is, as a utility, we typically industry-wide was focused on safe, reliable, and affordable power. And a big now question and need, you said the word, is resiliency. So I like to define that just to remind our listeners that, reliability is the idea that we plan our grids to ensure or create less impact on the chances of an event happening. So that's your reliability. Where resiliency is, we know that events will happen. How fast can we bring the grid back on? And that word is typically
Hmm.
going to microgrids. So are you guys seeing your customers? I know you said, the idea of it, but are they coming to you guys to like plan for the microgrids, or do you find that customers are going to create them and tell you after fact, or like is it a mix of both?
A mix of both. Again, great question. But we're making it known that this is something that we would like to support our customers in. We have two naval bases here in Jacksonville, and resiliency is something that's very important, as you can imagine, to both of those facilities. And so we've been having very great conversations with them. But there's also others, hospitals, what have you, that resiliency is very key because of the nature of the services that they have. So it's been a mixture of both, but I think that as we continue along the spectrum and communicate more with our customers and our stakeholders and continue to build our system so that more of this can be integrated, it will be less reactive and more so. I'm going to come to JEA. This is some of the things that we are thinking about, and they can be a trusted partner, as we develop these solutions.
I think that's also, I mean, everything going on, like the name of the podcast, All Things DER, I mean, it really changes how our industry looks at really everything from the customer to the overall design
Hmm.
to our processes and procedures. And I think, a lot of, and kind of the passion behind this podcast and the reason we want to do it is to really educate, those that are not within the walls of the utility and really change the message that we are your local energy advisors and we're here to kind of drive these new solutions because we're very aware that they're going to happen. So
Hmm.
we want to be a part of that. So it sounds like you guys are definitely aligned. So I guess, when you think about all the things that are kind of rapidly changing internally for you guys, what are you doing to really better yourself to enable and be prepared for this DER revolution? As I like to say, we're in the fourth industrial revolution by embracing the technologies. So what are you guys up to?
Well, I think we're asking the right questions right now, bringing Black and Veatch in to help us with our DER roadmap. And we have changed our organizational structure. So we have a whole division that is nothing but DER, which is under our whole strategy department. And so we want to make sure that we're having the internal resources that are focused on this. We can be more strategic and asking ourselves the questions, going out to both our internal and external stakeholders, identifying those gaps, identifying the opportunities, those challenges, and developing that roadmap. So it's an exciting time to be here, and what that roadmap is going to include, and I'm not going to presume the conclusions, but just by the things that we're having the discussions is, grid modernization. You hear about that, the right technologies, customer solutions, or incentives. Where does demand side respond? And the other thing that I did not mention, but I mentioned this in the beginning when I said we're a multifaceted, multi-service utility, is we have plants out there. We have over 1,700, I'll call it wastewater lift stations. We have all of that have backup generation capabilities. What picture does that play as far as DER resources? And so that's something else that we're going to be asking ourselves as we move towards the future.
I think just an umbrella perspective. When you're setting up this new DER team, I mean, are they really taking it from the moment a customer wants to do something different, which is, connecting technologies that are typically more than a furnace and a light bulbs, understanding like the implications of that new technology. So you have almost like a onboarding team, like an interconnection of the said DER. But then from there, really it touches, your customer programs, your asset management team in regards to like managing these new assets if they become a part of the grid, if not, AK, they're in front of the meter instead of behind. It touches your engineering
Hmm.
team, your operations, because they have to be aware of how the devices are out there and how they're interacting. I mean, it goes through the whole gamut. So is that new team that you set up kind of to help really create that cohesiveness across the whole
Yes,
broad span?
hmm right. That team is going to help facilitate that because it's going to be organization wide, but we need a team to help facilitate and bring structure to all of that and to help us ask the right questions because we're going from a one-way system to two-way. And what does that look like? And I can't even start to talk about all the data and the analytics and helping that to help us helping that help us make wise decisions as well as our customers. When you think about it, it seems like so much, and it is a lot because it's a monumental shift. It is a monumental shift.
Monumental.
But if we're not going to be ready, we're going to be reactive, which means it's not going to be the best for our customers. It's not going to be best for the utility. It's a lot. We're doing some really foundational things over the next 10 years. It's an exciting time to be here.
And I think, it is very exciting. I think another like thrust or like thread that, I love to communicate on this platform, and really hoping that, our regulators and our customers and our advocacy groups truly understand like how dynamic, something as simple as connecting to them a new technology at the edge shifts the overall culture of how we really design and operate our grid. And so it is no small feat, but also from a perspective of you need to do these things like plus one, small little steps. We can't boil the ocean, and we need to be able to really learn to take action. So it sounds like you guys are, in the process of setting up that roadmap and really creating that awareness so that you can start driving that change internally, just like everyone else in the industry. So it's really exciting to look up to. I guess, with our time coming to end, is there any like last, lessons learned or really kind of advice to those that may be just embarking on this journey of road mapping and really embracing this change within for our listeners?
I like what you said. What did you say? Can't boil the ocean?
Yeah.
It's take one step at a time. I would say it's the realization that this is happening. The realization that the industry is changing, and how can you best posture yourself. And if you don't have the internal resources, there are external experts to help you with this. But just posturing yourself, asking the right questions, because we certainly didn't have the answers, but doing it in a strategic manner and recognizing that there isn't one size to fit all, and making sure that whatever you're doing is inclusive and takes into consideration all of your customers and all of your stakeholders. That's the advice I would give.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time of just sharing, where you're on the journey. And I look forward to another great thing about our industry. Not only is it exciting and we're in this middle of a revolution, is that because we are who we are, we can share this information with each other and learn from each other. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of All Things DER. Thanks for tuning in. We hope today's conversation got you thinking about new and creative ways to improve our power grid. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to hear new episodes. This podcast is brought to you by AEIC, the place where operations leaders come together to share knowledge and provide guidance to the electric utility industry. We'll be back with a new episode soon. Until then, keep powering on.